Cincinnati Bengals, 2023 to 2024, however you say that word. Last year, suck. This year, all fuck. I believe in Burrow. He's going to be healthy. Give me the rundown.
I totally agree. So we are going to be doing our 2023 season and off-season recap and our look forward to 2024. I think you mentioned last year was a lot of suck. I think a lot of people forget that Joe Burrow started last year hurt to begin the year. He had a stretch of some pretty poor games. People were asking, has Joe Burrow lost it? Should I try to get away from Jamar Chase? And after about 3-4 weeks, he did start to pick it up. So I think people just forget that as you're looking back at his stats last year, there's a period of hurt and then a period of greatness and then 7 weeks without Joe Burrow. So all of that will spill over to other players on the team as well. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, and then any of the running backs, such as like rookie last year, Chase Brown.
Yeah. I think what I'm looking forward to most, because I feel like Burrow is definitely a given here. It's going to be great to see Jamar Chase is, obviously a top 3 wide receiver, but fantasy-wise might be a number 1, number 2 kind of thing. But I think what I'm really looking forward for this team is Zach Moss, maybe a little bit of Chase Brown because of how good Zach Moss was last year for a Indianapolis Colts team that somehow still exists. But Chase Brown, from what I saw in college, absolute hell of a runner, just absolutely destroyed so many people in the Big Ten, and I'm hoping he gets a better chance this year.
Yes. So I think he'll have a step back rushing, Zach Moss, compared to last year, his year with the Colts. When we look at the 2023 offensive line ranks for the Cincinnati Bengals, I have them listed as average to below average. And kind of, even as I say that, like they're not very good. So I think they're taking a step back for Zach Moss running behind the Colts line, moving to the Bengals line.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bengals line is definitely what has been getting Joe Burrow killed, but they did do some things to add to that, correct?
Yes. So for 2024 offseason departures, I don't have any of the offensive line listed. And for 2024 additions, they've signed offensive tackle Trent Taylor. And then in the first round this year, drafted Amarius Mims, a giant offensive tackle. I think the outlook on him is that he's still a bit raw, but as the 18th overall pick in the draft, we hope to project that he helps improve this line for rushing and for protecting Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and hoping that the line gets better is better than what they were doing previously, which is hoping that Joe Burrow doesn't die back there.
That he just stays fast.
Yes, just please stay fast. I know your leg was whatever exploded on the inside to some extent, but please, for the love of God, keep running, Joe.
So for a team that went 9-8, I'm just really surprised that they made it to 9-8 with kind of the injuries that they had, the state of that offensive line. Let's project forward for 2024. What sort of things we expect to see changing here? So in the offseason, the Bengals are losing offensive coordinator Brian Callahan he's off to be the head coach for the Titans, and they are promoting from within. It was quarterbacks coach Dan Pitcher. I don't know a ton about him. I don't really track quarterback coaches and how they affect teams and moving into becoming offensive coordinators. But I don't project a lot to change here with head coach Zach Taylor. He's been the play caller there for years. He'll stay as the play caller. They'll have a slightly changed coaching staff on the offensive side, but I don't see that as a big reason for things to change. So if you want to go top to bottom, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, and we can give a bit of a prediction for where we think things will go for 2024.
Okay. So as far as 2024 Burrow, where would you put him in your QBs list? Because, I mean, he still has a Jamar Chase connection. He still has T. Higgins. You just said it 10 seconds ago. So
he will still. He will still. As of now, our recording is going to be there for the year. I know he has requested a trade, but I'm projecting that he'll be there. When we're talking about Joe Burrow, I think he's a top guy. I think some people will look back at last year's stats and say he wasn't that good, and then he was hurt. And like we covered, I think he was hurt and then good and then hurt. So I'm putting him right back up to his peak. So that puts him in a kind of top 5, top 6 quarterback. He's not going to run a lot, but he's going to throw for a lot of yards, throw for a lot of touchdowns. I'm projecting a full bounce back to his best years.
And if you're a dumbass like me, now that he's not hurt, he's got that dog back in him again.
He's got that dog back in him.
He's got that dog. He's got that big bark. We've seen the bark. Jamar Chase, top 3 wide receiver. Who are you
I
saying
could see Chase
is above him?
I could see Chase as a top 1 receiver. So we're looking at guys like Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson. I can make the case for Jamar Chase at 1 based on what we've been saying of it was a down year. It was a 9-8 playoff miss down year, but I'm not really, when I look back on it, I don't really see that. I could easily see him being number 1, or I could make the case for him to be number 1. Tyreek Hill is great. He could be older. And when you're at the top, you're really just picking nits on greatness.
Yeah, especially like for me, like age, and for somebody who is like so fast like Tyreek Hill is, I think, it's pretty easy to put Chase up there because it was after the catch ability, especially. You saw him break off how many humongous runs after getting passes 2 years ago, I think is what it was, when you saw him really hit,
Yeah, he's great. T. Higgins.
Justin Jefferson is dead to me because AJ McCarthy is there.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, yeah, there's a clear reason to see a step back for Justin Jefferson. T. Higgins, I think he's still going to be a solid wide receiver 2, flex options. There's more guys coming into the league, but the same thing you've been getting for him for a couple of years, I expect the same. So when we hit running backs, I think you touched on it some. The team right now did not draft anyone. We're anticipating a mix between Zach Moss and Chase Brown. And these are both kind of guys we'll see how the summer progresses and see if either one of them is taking the lead. But this just kind of feels like the type of situation I personally try to avoid. Like if you're drafting Zach Moss, you're kind of getting him at his ceiling for a journeyman guy coming into what is perceived as a lead role. We see this a lot, and it just doesn't, more often than not, the guy doesn't become a top option. He fills the job for them, and they'll probably replace him next year. Chase Brown is a day 3 rookie. He had, I think it was like something under 50 snaps last year. We just don't really know. So if you're grabbing them late, I think I'm most likely to just take Chase Brown late and see what happens. But if he's going round 7, 8, I pass. If he's going past round 10, he's one of those see what they do week 1, week 2, and you can cut bait if you need to.
Yeah, Zach Moss for me last year was definitely, I grabbed him late in the year after, all the injuries for the Colts, and he carried me for the weeks that he got touches, and then there were other weeks where they just didn't want to give him the ball. So yeah, that's it. I wouldn't even consider him like a second running back, in my opinion. I think I would wait and see if he even got drafted, But who knows? Maybe he'll have another big portion of the year again. But like you said, 2 system back. I
think he'll be drafted pretty high, like round 4 or 5, and it's something I'm avoiding.
Yeah.
For the Bengals, for tight end, not a lot here for fantasy. They had Irv Smith last year. They are bringing in Mike Gesicki, who is a good NFL player, but for fantasy tight ends, good NFL player will get you a job in the league, but it doesn't really translate to usable fantasy tight end. You kind of need to be one of those top 4, top 5 guys, or otherwise you're just looking for filling in the matchups. So you can keep Mike Gesicki's name on your list for maybe a good matchup week, but not someone I'm investing a lot into.
No, until you get points for blocking and pretending like you might get the ball someday, not ideal.
Yeah, I think he's 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, and that's a dime a dozen. And what you're really looking for then is week by week advantages. And maybe he has a week or 2 where you pick him up and start him, but not a week in, week out kind of guy.
Absolutely.
I think that covers it for the offseason and the predictions for the Bengals for this year. Overall, I could easily see them. This is a team I could easily see go worst to first. They were last in their division, but they were 9-8, and a 9-8 team will make the playoffs every year. It just wasn't the Bengals last year, so I can easily see them jumping up to first in a very hard division.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch the Bengals again. I love watching Burrow and Chase, especially, obviously, when you have that connection. The friendship, the brotherly love that goes into that, I'm all about it. But then when it turns into fantasy points, that's even better. So I'm excited to see the Bengals really take a run at this division in general.